All right, now to the final bit, which is the most important part. I know I've been saying this a lot, but this is the most important part, which is multidimensional arrays. So let's say that we have illustration 4.php, right? So let's make our PHP portion, HTML, and here we go. Okay, so let's say that now we are talking about multi-dimensional array, or let's say 2D array. This is the dimension that we are going to work with, to be honest. So let's say that we have an array called, for example, blogs. I'm just going to copy and paste this to save you time. Okay, so we have a multi-dimensional array, or a 2D array called blogs, right? Notice that there are no associative arrays whatsoever so far. So I just have a variable called blogs. It has the big array, right? This is the bigger array, and inside the bigger array we have another nested multiple arrays. So we have a nested array here, this is the first element, a nested array there, the second element, a nested array at index of 2, the third element. So to accessing a 2D array, we use the same stuff. We use the bracket notation, but with indices. Or I'm not gonna say with indices, it really depends on what's inside, right? So the first element, we know that, or the first array, we are going to access the indices, right? So for example, if I want to say, I'm just going to use print r here. If I want to print the whole thing, it's going to look really ugly. Okay, but let's just see this. Okay, did we type something wrong? Okay, so it's gonna look really ugly. So it's saying here that the big array, which starts from there and ends there, has a couple of elements here. So the first element at index of 0, we have the first array like this. Okay, so this is the first array, and at index of 1 we have another array, which is the second chapter or the second block title. So the second array here, index of 1, this is the second array, right? So we have the second array has I don't know, the number of chapter, I think, and the chapter title, and index of 2, which is the third, or index of 3, this third element, has the name of the author, I believe, right? We have 4 elements per array. Okay, so this is how things are looking like. I'm just going to modify this a little bit. So if we want to grab the first chapter in the blog, or the first blog in the blogs, we can just say that this is the first element. And remember, the big array, the blogs itself is an array. So you can just say index of 0, and this is going to be returned. The first array is going to be returned. So if I index the bigger array by 0, the bigger array has been indexed by 0. So you're going to have all of this. Okay, so we are going to say that this is the first level of indexing. So you have the first array, which is 0, 1. Index of 2, you have journey begins. Index of 3, you have 20. And index of 4, you have the author name. Okay, so if you printed multiple times, I'm just going to use 1 because we are going to need the BR all over the place. So that is a hustle. Okay, let's just make another one, just another one. Okay, so this is the second array in the big array, right? So this is the second array, like that, right? If you want to access the second element of the first array, so this is the first array, right? So I want from the first array that has the index of 0, I want the second one, which is index of 1. So I'm going to index this with another 1, right? And let's say from the second array, which is having the index of 1, I want to access the author name, right, which is index of 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if I save and refresh, you have the journey begins and Muhammad. Okay, so this is accessing a 2D array. Or let's just say that this is array within array. Okay, now let's talk about another type of 2D arrays, which is basically an associative array within an array. So this is an associative array within a bigger array. Okay, So I'm also going to copy. After some thought, I thought that I'm going to write this for you, so you just would know how this is going to be written. So I'm just going to say that we have the variable. I'm just going to call it deep logs to make it different than the previous one. And notice that it's an associative or associative arrays. I'm sorry about that. This is a plural. So associative arrays within an array, right? Same thing here. Arrays within an array. Okay. So let's make the bigger array, the parent array. So this is my parent array, right? I'm just going to have some space here. Now let's say that the first element is going to be an associative array that is representing all of this. So notice how using array within arrays is really annoying. So here I need to memorize that the first index of 0 is representing the chapter number, an index of 1 is representing the title, an index of 2 is representing the number of pages, an index of 3 is representing the author. Why the hustle? You can just make associative arrays and make a key for every value and you're done. So let's make the first key value pair, which is basically the number of chapter or the chapter number. So I'm just going to make a key called chapter like this, and the arrow here and the value, which is happened to be 1. So this is the first key value pair. We're done with the first element. Now let's talk about the title here. So I'm just going to make a key called title, an arrow, and the value. Alright, let me just do this one more time. Okay, now we have pages. So pages, I'm going to make another key value pair and called pages, right? And arrow, and it's 20. And finally we have the author, that's the last key value pair. Alright, and this is a string, and we're done. Okay, so we are going to make a comma to write the rest of the blogs. I'm just going to copy this, since you know the drill now, and paste them here. Okay, so let me just format them the same way. And what else? Okay, and this is it. Okay, so this is an associative array or associative arrays within an array, right? And the indexing is the same. So I'm just going to use print r for this one. So print r is useful if you want to print the whole thing, but if you are printing a specific index, you can as well use echo, but with the help of the curly braces. So let's use echo on this one, since if I use print r and printed the whole two-dimensional array, it's going to look really bad. So take a look at this. It's going to be really big that you can't even trace. So there is no point in doing that. So I'm just going to remove this and use the normal echo here. And curly braces, I'm going to use to index them. So let's access the bigger array. So this is the bigger array, and let's say that we want the first element at index of 0. And afterwards, let's say that we want from the first element, which is at index of 0, which happens to be an associative array, I want using bracket notation to access the number of chapters. So I have the key, so I can just say that chapter is going to be the following. So take a look at this, and I think there should be a br right there before the last print statement. Okay, so the number of chapter is 1. Okay, now let's say that I want to access the second array, right, which is an index of 1, and I want the title of that blog, right? So I want the key to be title. So you have the title as confrontation. Okay, and this is all about associative arrays within arrays or two-dimensional arrays. Now the most important part, and that's really the most important part, I'm not bluffing at this point at all. We need to see how can we traverse or iterate over a two-dimensional array, right? If you want to see how to traverse through a two-dimensional array that happens to be arrays within array, then do this on your own. I'm not going to do this in this tutorial. Okay? I'm just going to grab the associative arrays with an array because this is the most important part. This is how things are going to be looking like. This is essentially the format that you are going to see from a data that is being retrieved from the database, right? So let's just say that I will do the following, and I'm going to say for each. Notice that this is an array. The main theme here, the main parent is an array, so we don't really need this notation because we are not dealing with associative arrays. So I'm just going to call this array element, right? And I'm just going to say that this is called the blocks, right? And let's say the following, right? So for every array element, okay, which happens to be the whole array, the whole associative array, right? I'm just going to say that this is associative array, so AA, for every associative array element inside the big array that is called the blocks. So every element is essentially a very big associative array. So this is at iteration 1, this is the first element, this is the whole associative arrays that we have. At iteration 2, this is the whole associative array that we have, and so on. Okay, so I'm just going to do the following. I'm going to type or to print chapter. Let's say this is going to be chapter, and here we want to have the chapter number from that associative array. So from that associative array, I want the chapter number. So I'm just going to index it via the bracket notation. Okay, remember, we are not double indexing anything because the first layer of indexing has been already done by the for each. So the for each has executed the first layer of indexing, which is this part, right? By doing this kind of notation here. Okay, so what the for each is doing is saying that the first element, the second element, the third element is there with you. So this element actually provides you with the actual element. Okay, so it's as if all of this part is being substituted with this variable here from the for each. So if we have all of this, which represent the actual associative array, like this part here, I can just go ahead and access or index that associative array with the key that I want to grab from that associative array. All right. So I'm going to stack things on the same line. So I'm just going to say title, and let's grab from that associative array using bracket notation the title, and let's grab the pages or the number of pages. I'm just going to say number of pages. Okay, and we have here associative array again, so pages, and finally we have author name and author, or from the associative array get me with bracket notation the author. Okay, so I'm just going to have a BR like this, and this is going to be running over and over for every element inside the very big array. So for every associative array this is going to happen. So let's see how this is looking like, and here you go. Okay, now let's see the activity here. Okay, so the activity here is having product price, and it's really obvious that product price, this is key and this is value, or maybe you'd have a product name as a key and a price as another key. So we have an associative array. This is yelling to you that this can be written in associative array format, right? So you want this to be printed like this in the PHP portion, and you want this to be printed like that in the HTML portion, with a little bit of CSS applied to the background colors, and that's really easy. So let's see how can we do that. Let's go to activity 3, and you're gonna find that this is your product associative array, and you have a product name. This is the key, and shiny star, this is the first value here. So this is a key value here. This is another key value here. Notice that this is an associative array associative array, associative arrays, and you can actually tell that this is associative array the minute that you see an arrow right there. So this is how you differentiate between a normal array and an associative array. Okay, so this is an array that has within it associative arrays. Okay, so first of all, let's print the following. Let's have this shape right there. This looks printed. So name is and price hyphen price. Okay, so let's do this. First of all, I'm going to make this product slash price thing, product price, and notice that it is underlined, so I'm just going to use this BR so we don't forget to go a new line, and this is it. Now let's say maybe there's a colon here. Now let's make a loop to go through every one of these with the prefix name is and the prefix price. So I'm going to use for each because this is easier, and notice I'm not dealing directly with the associative array. We are not directly interacting with the associative arrays. First we need to access the first layer of indexing, which is accessing the bigger array first, right? Once we access the bigger array, you have the element directly, you have the associative array directly to access whatever key that you want to access. So first of all, since we are dealing with an array to begin with, the starting indexing layer is an array, so I'm just going to have it like this. This is the notation that we need, right? And once you use the for each, as we've said before, the for each is going to give you the first element of anything. So the first element of the array that you're passing. In this case, we are passing products. So the first element of the array products is going to be an associative array. The second element is happening to be another associative array, and so on. Okay, so this value here is representing every associative array in the array products. Okay, don't forget that. So you can name it AA array or associative array, that like the one that we have used in the previous example, but I'm just going to leave it value. And now let's echo and let's say name is, right, curly braces, and let's use that value, which is the first associative array, brackets, using bracket notation, and access the name hyphen price and curly brace value again. Oops, what did we do? Value again, and access using bracket notation the price key BR, and take a look. Let's go to activity 4. I think it's activity 3. Okay, so this is it. Now let's do this or inject this into HTML, and this is the annoying part. Now let's just see what are the guidelines that I gave you. So we have the main element is an H3. Okay, what I mean by the main element is that if you took a look at the PowerPoint here, so this line is an H3, all of these are H3s. Okay, I think this is an H1, we don't really care about the title here. So all of these are H3s being generated inside the loop. Alright, and every H3, so every line, every H3, they have two spans. The first span contains the first value of the key value pair. The second span contains the value from the second key value pair, which happens to be price. Okay, the first span is styled with a background color of this green color, and the second span is styled with this background color of yellow, I guess. Okay, so one that displays product name and the other span displays the price. Okay, so first of all we need a loop. This is what we know that we are going to do here. So let's write the loop header. So for each, again, we are not initially dealing with an associative array. First of all, you need to access the array itself, the parent array. So for every value in products, right, let's just make this at one line like that, and this is the opening bracket, right, and let's just make the closing bracket as since we are at it, right. So this is the closing bracket. Okay, and let's put the H3 here. All right, so what is a static string? We have so many static strings here. So product name and product price, these are all static strings. So we don't really need to have them inside our PHP tag, right? So before we start any PHP tags, I'm just going to write product name, and some space. Notice that these spaces are not going to reflect in the HTML document. As you know, there's a hyphen here. See, there's a small hyphen here. Okay, and product price. And now let's do our span. So I'm just going to create the first span here. Inside the first span, right, we are going to have the first value of the key value pair. So the first value here. So we are going essentially to have this associative array in value. So this is the first associative array, and I want to grab the name, right? So from, let's just make a PHP tag here. So from the first associative array, I'm going to grab the name, and notice you need to have this inside an echo statement, so it should be printed. Okay, so I'm just going to use the curly braces all over the place again, like this. Okay, alright, so this is the first one. Alright, since we are at the first associative array, let's as well grab the other value which is under the key price. Alright, so I'm just going to do the same stuff here and make another span right after the product price. Inside that span, I'm going to have I don't know if the screen can fit all of this, but I hope that you're getting the idea. Okay, so the other span is going to be accessing from the current associative array that you are at, which happens to be having the value of, or the variable name value. I'm going to access the value under the key price here, under the key price, right, like this, and this should do it. All right, so let me just refresh, and here you go. So just recapping what we have done, we've made a very big H3 that is going to be generated every time the loop executes. Now this is a static text that I've excluded out of my PHP tag, and I open the span, right? The first span contains the value of the first key, which is name, that is inside my associative array. So for example, if I am at the first associative array, the first element, so then the value for the first key, which is name, is going to be shiny star. So this is what's going to be printed here, shiny star. And product price, okay, then this is a static text as well. Then we started another span within the same H3. Okay, inside the second span, I grabbed the value from the second key value pair, okay, that is under the key price. So if we are at the first, for example, again, if we are at the first associative array, the value under the key price, which is 20, is going to be replaced under this highlighted area here, 20. Okay, so that's how you are seeing things here. Now let's give some background color to the first span and the second span. Let's give a background color to the first span, but first let's give a class to the first span. Let's say that the first span is going to have a class of first, and the second span is going to have a class of second. This can be of your choice, of course. And let's make some internal, I gave you some internal style sheets, right? But I gave the first one as name and the second as price. So let's just stick to this. So this is name, and the second, let's just call it price. So if we refresh, you're gonna, we didn't save, okay. You're gonna see this is the styling, all right? Now, the last activity is essentially the same thing, but I just want the HTML portion. I'm not going to do this. I want you to try it on your own. If you look at activity 4, you're going to see that you have a 2D array, which is essentially associative arrays that is within an array. Okay? And what I want you to do is, using the styles that I've provided here, create a table, and I've started the table for you. I started that told you that this is the table, and this is the header. This is the first, the header at the beginning. So I've just written for you department, year, semester, module. I've just written the heading of the table, right? So this is the T head, right? Inside the t head we have t rows, and for every row we have a td, which represents a column. Okay, so in the t body you're gonna make a t or a t row and td's inside this t rows, right? And it should be generated every iteration. So try to do this on your own, right? And try to reach out to this looks.